DC Crisis event that, instead of looking outward to existential threats, decides to look inward at crises of the mind. A murder mystery at a secret facility built for heroes to offload issues. Sounds amazing. Sadly though, Tom King's Heroes in Crisis doesn't live up to its own premise, and I'm going to break down why the story doesn't work. Quick disclaimer, I'm only looking at the main story rather than the tie-ins, and expect major spoilers if you've not read the series. Numerous dead heroes, including Arsenal, Flash and Blue Jay, are found at Sanctuary, a secret centre for heroes to get therapy. While Superman, Batman and Wonder Woman are trying to figure out who is the murderer, Harley Quinn and Booster Gold have conflicting memories of what happened. Both think the other has done it, coming to blows in an attempt to get to the truth of the matter. Now, throughout this story, the artwork is fantastic. Clayman's and Maury's work together in many places throughout the 9 issues is beautiful, and it is rightly being commended as such. I also really think the panel layout throughout the series is really great as well. The story, however, has many issues, but it's the offloading I want to start with, as it's quite mixed. Heroes would speak to Sanctuary, a computer system designed by Batman that automatically deletes what was recorded. These interviews provide some of the best bits of the series, highlighting lesser used characters as well as some of the mainstays like Batman. This is a great way of showing the pressures on the heroes and promoting better mental health. However, a handful of the perspectives shown feel a bit out of character or forced as a joke, which then undermines any positive message King might have been trying to get across, as it trivialises some of the characters' problems. As I said, this is a bit of a mix, as I generally enjoy these interviews and they fit into the concept of the story and Sanctuary itself. As mentioned though, to protect the heroes, Batman made sure that none of this info is kept, protecting the identity and experiences of those heroes. Seems like a sensible idea, right? But why record it in the first place? Wouldn't it be better and safer to have them talk to, I don't know, an empty room, a flower pot, something that doesn't record? It's probably of no surprise then that Batman's super therapy computer is compromised and videos of heroes talking to the camera are leaked. They're leaked to Lois Lane, who, after sitting on them for a few days, makes the story public. For me, whilst this pushes the story along, it seems like a betrayal of character not only for Lois, but Superman too, who doesn't talk her out of it. This leads to people rightly fearing the heroes. Beings with immense power who might be having a mental health crisis, that's something you probably not want to hear. And we get a great long monologue from Superman, weirdly sold as a brief statement from the hero community. Seriously though, it goes on for 8 pages, but it highlights the scars brought about from putting your life on the line time after time. Whatever qualms I've got about the story, dialogue is not one of them in this, and I think King has done a great job there. Harley fighting DC's Holy Trinity reminds me of the fight in Identity Crisis where Deathstroke takes on the Justice League. Sure, Harley stealing the lasso of truth to then force Batman into revealing where he kept kryptonite was creative and even had the payoff from a joke, as Bruce had denied keeping any on him mere moments ago. But it's still a bit jarring given the disparity in power, experience and speed between them. As I said in my Identity Crisis video though, most comic fights are silly when you think about it, so I mainly give this one a pass. But now we're getting to the real crux of the issue. Wally. As it turns out, Wally West is responsible for all the deaths of the heroes, courtesy of him having a breakdown, losing control and releasing a burst of Speed Force energy. There are clues to his mental instability hinted at through the issues. In his interviews with Sanctuary, he's making little if any progress in his time there, speaking about the losses in his life. He decides then for some reason to crack Batman's system for protecting the interviews of heroes, piecing together a puzzle that would take a normal person a billion years, but in a few seconds. With this, he accesses the records of all those who pass through Sanctuary, and for a moment he doesn't feel alone. Now that would be a really powerful moment. Perhaps Wally feels some sort of solace that he's not alone, but instead he becomes overwhelmed, and it is that overload of information causes him to crack and lose control, the Speed Force launching out of his body as the others fatally choose to come to his aid. He then makes a decision to use Sanctuary to create fake realities where Harley and Booster see each other killing the heroes. He then disappears 5 minutes into the future to kill that version of himself, so then as to bring that body back and leave it at the scene. Simple, right? My issues with the series revolve around this scenario. The whole plot was set up as a murder mystery, so like murder mysteries, there's an information dump right at the end, revealing Wally as the killer and what had actually happened. What it lacked though was a motive, which normally makes murder mysteries have a satisfying payoff. That's been replaced with Wally's breakdown and loss of control instead, which I think is far less interesting. And again, this is really reminiscent of Identity Crisis, where the motive was just Jean Loring being mad. And now if you're asking the question, why didn't Wally just go back in time to fix things? Well, King has got that covered. Wally didn't want to do a Barry and cause a flashpoint. Now I just want to point out two things which I think we're supposed to believe that Wally did, I really want answered. Firstly, who is sending the videos to Lois? Now it could only have been Wally, so why did he do it? And secondly, why were there a set of toy teeth in Commander Steele's esophagus? Did Wally shove his hand down Steele's throat purely to try and frame Harley? That's incredibly dark. And whilst we're on it, why even try and frame Harley and Booster? Wally could have made Sanctuary show them the same thing where someone else, literally anyone else, Killer Croc, Sinestro, Jean Loring, anyone else, killed the heroes. He was apparently only framing himself to buy himself time to then confess via video. For the fastest man alive, buying time seems unnecessary to say the least. And just to bring up another loose end, the Barry Allen Flash is adamant that Booster killed the other heroes, disappearing to the scene and then rushing back to punch Booster in the face, supposedly finding evidence that Booster was responsible, but we don't find out what that evidence is. Anyway, it all gets neatly tied up with the future Wally and current Wally, as Booster puts it, completing the loop, where the current Flash doing whatever the future or old one did with a younger Flash, and so on, ad infinitum. Makes sense, right? Just time travel stuff. And they just go to the future to grab a clone of Flash to be the body, which doesn't sound very ethical. Either way, everyone loves the use of time travel and clones in comics. So Booster, Harley, Poison Ivy and Blue Beetle all decide to help keep Wally secret, and then the Trinity turn up to chuck him behind bars, both of which seem absurd. Were the former happy to help cover up the ordeal? Bros before heroes, as Booster puts it. This seems problematic if you see the heroes as, I don't know, something akin to a police force. Given the political climate at the time, I'm surprised this got through. Worse though was that Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman just locked Wally up. Wasn't this whole story supposed to be about mental health? If Wally was having a mental health crisis, then surely his level of accountability was diminished. Isn't there an alternative that sees a better outcome for Wally despite of his actions? Like maybe seeing professional help rather than being behind lock and key. Now I'm not blaming all of this on Tom King by any means. In an interview with CBR, he explains that editorial told him the story had to include Wally, Harley and Booster. King, whilst quite protective of the story, wishes it hadn't included Wally. And in fairness, that's where a lot of the issues come from, and it certainly received a lot of backlash from fans who didn't want to see Wally treated that way. What I do think King could have worked on was coming up with a legitimate reason as to why Wally would cover it up and then the reaction from his fellow heroes. But he may have written himself into a bit of a corner by having a hero as a killer anyway. And in comic book tradition, if something is controversial, it has to be retconned. In Flash 761, Reverse Flash admits to Barry that he was the one who manipulated Wally into covering it all up. The Flash 2021 annual then reveals that it was Savitar who caused the surge in Speed Force energy, killing the heroes. And then finally in Flash 795 and 796, we find out that none of the heroes died and instead had been replaced with clones from the 35th century. Yeah. For me, the story isn't terrible by any means. If you just concentrate on the artwork, it's a really enjoyable book. But what annoys me about it is it could have been a really good series. In conclusion, premise good, execution bad. But what do you think?